Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another podcast, a series that I have been doing for the last this year. We started with a couple um, of webinars, or rather discussions that we had on the podcast related to technical writing. And I had planned this for a while now that it would not be only on tech writing, and we'll be discussing um, topics related to basically health, related to everything in different walks of life. So the topic that I have chosen today to discuss upon is something that is very close to mine, close to me because of the fact that I am, a parent to an ADHD kid, and I have a daughter who's Shivangi, who's 6+ years old, and she was diagnosed with ADHD and ASD when she was 2 years old. And so I decided that there are a lot of concerns, or let's say, in the society that we live in. This is nowhere a rent that I'm doing here at that point of a time, but I just wanted to talk about what people really think about it. Just wanted to highlight a little bit about this thing. So the topic chosen is parenting and the journey beyond autism. And I am so delighted, excited to be joined by Abhirami Sundara Pandian. She is a seasoned technical communication professional, currently working as a lead technical communicator at Nokia. She has built a decade of experience in the field. She has built her career across various roles in technical documentation, steadily growing from hands-on contributions to leading initiatives and teams. Um, Abhirami's journey has been, including working, has been to from working on customer documentation and advancing into senior and lead roles, reflecting, depth in her craft and the ability to take on broader responsibility. She has also earlier worked as a research assistant in Indian Institute of Science, bringing a perspective to how she approaches content structure and communication. So I'm delighted to have you with me, Abhirami, and I know her for, I think we know each other for almost
6 years now.
6 years now and all that stuff. Thank you so much for doing this, Abhirami. And before we start, just to lay the foundation, the objective of today's discussion is to um, raise awareness of ADHD and ASD. That's one. The second thing is why when people look at our kids, or when people look at a neurodivergent kids, why they do look like as if, they consider, or they fear there's something's missing with them. I want to sort of like discuss with them, everything's fine with them, share real experience of parents and caregivers, talk about the school, society, and inclusion part of it, where school plays a role, and even on a broader scale, where society comes into, play a part. And obviously, I keep reading a lot of stuff on newspapers and media that where the kids of today are having a difficult, or the parents have a difficult time and all that stuff, to talk about them and all that. So we want to talk all of these things here today's in our discussion point of view. So just a sec. Okay. All right. Okay. So we want to do all of these things, stuff and all that stuff. So early summer morning here in Bangalore. It's been quite hot and humid in these days, and um, so we are recording it early morning. So please bear if you hear some groggy voices from our end and all that stuff. All right, Abhirami, thank you so much for doing it. I'll start off. Um, Abhirami, as a mother to a neurodivergent child, um, tell me something about your kid to the audience. What's your kid like? What's first his name? What's his interest, hobbies, etc.
Okay. So before I even start with my answers, I want to thank you, Rusty, because this is one of the rarest episodes. Usually, podcasts focus on more of technical stuff. And with AI ML booming, we only see technical podcasts, and it's very rare that we have a very heartfelt conversation with someone else, and also them being a special parent. So thanks for having me today. And so I think the next 1 hour I'm going to enjoy answering your questions. I only hope not to get emotional at any point because it's quite normal for any special parent. And to start off with my child, I have a 7-year-old. His name is Athiram. Is diagnosed with ASD, and he's also nonverbal. So he's a self-contained child. He's a child who is happy being with himself most of the time. And in fact, when you observe him through the day, around 90% of the time you'll see him doing his own thing. So he's quite reserved, and he doesn't socialize much. But having said that, he's okay. He's completely okay with children being around him. So even if they try to interact with him, he simply chooses not to respond. So there's no eye contact, there's no engagement, or even say an acknowledgement from his end. But there's no negative reaction either. So there are no tantrums, or he doesn't ask him to move away. So when I say that he doesn't socialize, it's his choice, but then he's okay with other kids socializing with him. It may sound a bit weird, but that's how he is. And when it comes to his hobbies, he's not drawn to toys or gadgets like most kids are today, and he has a very specific preference. So anything that he picks should meet his sensory needs. So that's how a default choice is. And he's comfortable repeating the same activity again and again, and even 1,000 times day in day out, he can do it. And for us, it could also be annoying looking at a child doing the same thing repeatedly, but then as far as he's concerned, it brings some kind of comfort or a joy in his own way. So he's very limited to toys, and that's also one reason why I politely ask people not to buy him toys, because it's not to offend them, but I, as a mother, know that he's not going to touch them, only because the toys these days are only going to be regulating it to another extreme, his emotions to other extreme, but is not going to calm him down in any way. So his hobbies are very limited, and another interesting thing about him is he's extremely time bound. So right from his meal times to the time he leaves and gets back home from school. So he's got this biological clock ticking in, and unlike any of us, he doesn't need a wristwatch or a reminder. So when it's time, he knows. So that's also why I my schedule should be like really timed every day, so that I don't mess up with any of his routine. So he's a very routine oriented kid. And pretty much this is him.
Okay, Abhirami, just a sec. I'll just switch on the light a little bit. I don't know if, yeah, just give me a sec.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yep. Pretty much you summed it up a lot of things about my kid, Shivangi Gupta. Shivangi is 6+ years now, and she's verbal though. She is verbal, and she when we started noticing that when she was 2 years or 2 years when she was not pointing at things and all that stuff for that matter, and then her, a lot of pediatricians would not. They don't properly diagnose a kid. When you go for the vaccine and all that stuff, they don't tell you that your child has some sort of a condition that you need to actually focus on. But in our condition, in our case, and we are going to a pediatrician right from when Shivangi was born. That same pediatrician continues even today with my second year, second child also, Dr. Nilesh, who's based out of in Cloud9 Kanakpura Road. we started doing this particular thing, and then therapies and all that sort of a thing. So at this moment of time, as you can see, yes, she's very time bound. And so what we had done is that what I do is that every morning before I go, I create a visual schedule for her, something like this on a white paper like this. So get up in the morning, brush your teeth, starting all with your imperative verbs. So dress up, you know, have your breakfast. And every time she's completing one activity, right, you strike it out or let her do that. Strike it, finish. Go to school with Papa. Very close to me. And that can be very emotional, challenging for you because of the fact that she still thinks that when Papa drops, but in Bengali we say Baba, when we drop her at give it to an ayah and all that, there is going to be that 2 minutes or 3 minutes of screaming. And that is also a time that she has to be emotionally regulated. So the thing is, I go to a school where she gets a special education kind of a thing. So they know what her condition and all that stuff for that. So she has a visual schedule. She has a pattern that she follows, which means that if you're watching TV right now and it is time to switch off the TV, even if the other person is weak, she will come and switch off the TV, switch on this thing. This this has got nothing to do with the fact that she doesn't want to watch you. It's like she
Yes,
has a time regulated count. So
exactly.
we certain things that we know, even with a youngest kid, she makes sure that she's not outside the door. So she will pull this thing out at that point of a time. Now the younger kid, the youngest one is a bit dramatic one. So she has a like this thing. Well, again, but she's very reasonable. She's very this thing and all that. Studies wise, good with numbers. This thing, sensory issues are there, TikTok working, kind of a thing at that point of time. So I can relate a lot of your things with this thing. And yeah, when I say verbal, not the sentence formation kind of a verbal, it's look those phrases and clauses for that this thing which comes into picture. Emotional, this thing at that point of time. So you can understand um, that where what we are going through at that point of it. Yes, she has her likes. You mentioned about toys. There are a few sensory toys. The other day, you know, um, we went to a therapy center for her language thing. We were coming back. The first day, the therapist had given her that toy. It is a giraffe with a sensory toy. You can stretch it and all that sort of. She needs a lot of pressure, which makes her this thing. Now, she expected the same day that she would give the same thing back to her. There was this problem. I have
Mm.
never found out this thing. She did all this stuff and all that thing at that point of it. Somehow I was able to manage, get her in. Then I gave her water, made her understand. It took 5 minutes to calm down. So these are situations. These are things with my kid. That you mentioned about socializing and all that. She wants to, but she doesn't know how to engage. She doesn't know how to go into this thing and all that stuff. Anyways, that's about my kid, Shivangi. Um, so about your kid, it's early morning. Does he know where you are? Is he sleeping?
I
Yeah.
intentionally chose this slot only because I don't want him to mess with the podcast. So
Okay.
yeah, so today I had to retain his dad from playing badminton because uh, I know he'd be banging the door sometime 10 minutes
Okay.
later or 15 minutes later. So he's asleep present.
Yeah, and one more thing, because when I was just talking, it reminds me that one of the earliest symptoms that or the thing was that Shivangi used to headbang. Shivangi used to headbang when she was two. Um, I didn't want to tell anybody this thing, but I started doing a little bit of research on my own to find out. I was very scared. I was so disappointed at that point of a time. So that those were the earliest things. So parents who are listening to it and all that, the earliest symptoms, pick it up, but don't be so. Don't get. I mean, it's very natural that you will feel. disappointed and all that stuff. Or in other words, what will happen, you can may get into a depression kind of a thing, but you have to fight it out. That's the thing. All right, tell me, he knows that you were working in a software organization. You were such a successfully, tech communicator now. Does he know what you are doing? And the easy aware of what his mommy does.
So, yes, yes, he is aware. He's aware that I'm a working professional because, of course, in his own terms. And that how do I know that is from the moment I log in until I log out of work, he understands that my world is different, and he's a very obedient child. I mean, he's got the other side, but
Mm.
there has to be one parent who can regulate him. So
Mm.
I'm the
Mm.
one who does that, and my husband goes along the way he wishes to go. So he's a very obedient child, and it's very rare that during my work hours he annoys me or interferes during my work hours. So that way I know that he is aware that my day is also scheduled, and when I'm hooked up to my work, it's a bit difficult for me to shift my focus towards him. So that way, in his own understanding, he knows that I'm into something else, and if I call it work, it can be work. And right after 6 p.m., he demands me to shift back the focus to him. So it's like that. So I will not trouble you until 6 p.m., but after 6 p.m.,
Mm.
don't give me
Mm.
any reasons to sit with your laptop. I'm not going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's one way I would say that he is aware I'm a working professional. But I don't know whether he knows what I am at work. What do I do at work? Do I talk to people? Am I successful, or what is happening with me? But something that I'm really sure of is. He knows that his mom is a very confident woman. That's also based on the way I anchor things at home.
Mm.
And another thing that will help him understand that is, he knows the laptop does not upset me. So when I sit at work, he knows that I'm not stressed, I'm not upset, because
Mm.
this is also one good way for me to divert myself, because I can't keep looking at things that will keep stressing me over and over. I need to shift back my focus so that when I get back to him, I have all the energy again, Rico. So that's one reason why I still choose to work, and he knows that somehow. And in his own terms, the laptop never upsets me. And to any child whose parent is working, I think that's what matters the most, because at the end of the day, if you're stressed after your work and you really can't give your time to the child, then the child knows that it's the laptop that's troubling, because that's the only interface I've got at home. And particularly when there is a hybrid scenario, when I step out of house, he's fine. He knows I'm going to go out somewhere and going to get back in a couple of hours. But the challenge is when you're working at home, when you're working
Mm.
from home, with the setup here, with the expectation that the child does not distract you too much. So that
Mm.
way, I'm very fortunate that he has understood quite a bit of it.
That's nice. That's very good because my child, for that matter, when I switch on the laptop, she also understands that, this is the time that I'll be conducting my training and all that sort of a laptop. So she doesn't come and disturb her during part unless and until she has something very urgent, she will come. But otherwise, she doesn't come in that case because they understand that this is the time he's working and all. But after a period of time, I don't know how it works, whether they're able to actually see the clock and all that. She will say that Papa is working, or Papa needs to come, this thing and all that sort of a stuff for that matter. So, and when we go out for that matter, if I am going out on work and all, yes, if she if she comes to know that I'm going out and all that, and then there is a little bit of yeah, meltdown, or she will cry a little bit. Her mother has to then regulate the situation a little bit. She knows that I will come back after a while, but there is this initial 5 minutes that when we go out, she means let's all go out together. So it's difficult, but at the same point of a time, you know, but during sort of like, I mean, and even if, I mean, yeah, as you say, fortunate. I think fortunate in a sense that it has never happened that she has come or switched off the laptop or that would have been a very trouble thing for me. But hopefully, it stays the same and they understand this thing. So good. Um, I'm not going to talk about the medical diagnosis for our kids, Virami, but tell me, for a lot of us, when did you first notice Athirvan, you said?
Athiran, yes.
Athiran,
Athiran,
okay. When
yes.
did you first notice that Athiran is developing differently, or let's be honest, is different from rest of the neurotypical kids?
Um, so the straightforward answer to that is when he was around 3 years, but I would like to take back to the phase where I actually started noticing. Um, we had taken him to the US when he was around a year old, and you know everything was new, right from the place, the people, the environment, and the weather, and so on. And for a year, he was raised with his extended family being very close to him. So my siblings, the my parents coming in, and cousins and all of them. So all of a sudden, everything was cut off, and he was there in a different place. So I initially believed that any difference in his behavior was only because of this change. So I
Okay.
refused to consider anything else being a reason for this. But over the next
When
six
you say
months
any
or so,
difference in behavior, what would that be?
so getting aggressive, and him being nonverbal, there was
Oh,
no babbling also for me to understand. And his stubbornness increasing. He wants to somehow convey that he doesn't like being there. So these were all behavioral changes that
okay.
actually cropped up, but I completely was blindfolded. I thought it was only because of the change, and it was only 3 months since I went there. I saw these changes, and then I thought he may probably need a bit more time because the plan was to stay there for a year. And in the next 6 months, it actually started getting a bit harder, and his stubbornness increased, and the aggression was a bit overwhelming for me to handle. And and it was also peak winter. That was really bad. I mean, I probably chose the wrong time, or maybe any other child would have been okay with that climate, but I couldn't step out to calm him down because these children need to be calmed down, and not it just can't be with the parent. The environment contributes to it, the people around contribute to it. So that's when the stress started building, and
Mhm.
that is also when I thought it's high time when I decided to get back home. And once we returned back to India, I mean, I had to bring him because my husband couldn't come back, and it was an on-site opportunity for him. So I had to bring him back, and once I was back home, um, he was around the age of 2, and physical milestones were all perfect. Nobody would even guess that he has something to be diagnosed with. So his physical milestones were perfect. All his, the way he convinced us with his physical milestones, it kind of reassured that yeah, he is fine. There's nothing to be bothered about. But some developmentally something felt off. He wouldn't respond to his name being called, or he wouldn't identify his close circle. And he's got a very specific circle, and he doesn't let anyone else get into the
Mm.
circle. So it's a set of, say, 5 or 6 people. And when I say the circle is really very short, my expectation is that he should recognize at least 3 or 4 of them, but he had difficulties in recognizing them. So there was a disconnect I couldn't explain to my family, because that was the starting point, and I couldn't give them concrete reasons as to why I wish to look at it in the other perspective. So there again, my family reassured me, coming from a typical South Indian family, it's hard for us to convince them and also for them to accept what we say when it comes to children. So I was being assured time and again that he's a male child. Boys generally develop these milestones a bit slower, so let us give him some time. So he will. Meanwhile, he was already 2.5 to 2.8, and I knew that I was losing time, but I was also helpless. But there was some kind of instinct that kept bothering me. It wouldn't settle, and I would even say, luckily, he fell sick one fine day, and the temperature was too high. And that's when I took him to a different pediatrician because the one I used to consult was on a long break.
Oh,
And at the first glance itself, the pediatrician told me that there is something bothering here. And he simply gave us two links, assessment links. Back then, it was offered by Nimhans Bangalore. And that was for me and my spouse to take up the test independently. So, the term NIMHANS itself is taken
oh,
in a
oh.
wrong way.
In the wrong way.
And
Yeah.
it's hard for us to convince the family that it is a place to look for issues, and it need not be a mental asylum. That's the general assumption here. And so when I used the word NIMHANS, the whole family backed out, but I had to do it. And in a week, we got the results, and it indicated that he fell on the autism spectrum. So by then he was around 2.8, but it took around 2 to 3 months for me to settle down with the fact that he actually fell on the spectrum and to understand what autism is, because
Yeah.
it's easy for people to label that as some kind of mental instability, or some kind of IQ, lack of IQ, or some kind of capability issues in the child. But then, as a parent, my role was to understand what autism is. Otherwise, it's hard for me to travel along. And when I started looking at him really close, around 3 is when his behavioral changes were really prominent, that I convinced myself, yes, there is something that I need to look into and I need to really address, because he's already 3, and his brain was budding back then. Maybe if I had 6 more months, or if I had checked a year earlier, it would have been easier. So that's when I realized that it's already too late, and I had to really start working on it. So getting back to the question, it was around 2.8 to 3 years when I noticed that he had this issue.
Okay. Yeah. So I think in my side, in my case, 1.5 year, 2 year, as I mean, when I look back and till 1.5 year, she was, and when I look those earlier videos, those videos are still there. And not only that, Shivangi also goes through my mobile phone for videos. And she looks at those videos and all that stuff. So when I looked at those videos for that, everything was fine. Where it not, and I think rather than my wife, I would say it was me. It was I who noticed first of all that one occasion was when she got frustrated and she was headbanging it once or twice. So that caught my attention once. Then she was not pointing. So when we went to the pediatrician and the same guy and all that, and he asked me, and he used to regularly ask this question. And I remember during 1.5 year too, he was asking, does she point? Does this thing and all that? And he was, and then he told me at that point of a time, I think you need to go to a dem. I think she has ADHD or something like that. Then I sort of like did research, and I on my own, you spoke about the checklist. There are a lot of things on mobile these days and all that. So I checked it. So I could understand that she was falling. But my this thing was that is this condition treatable? That was on the back of mind. Her mother took a lot of time for her to actually accept the fact. There was a lot of stress that we underwent and all that. But it's not about going on to this. But yeah, so 1.5 year, 8 months is when we first started Shivangi noticing. To all the parents, look out for the symptoms. I think the other symptom is that look out if they are actually pointing out if they are actually, or if they are actually attempting to speak a little bit and all that, or they're just constantly pulling you at that point of a time. But handbanging is definitely one of the most significant point for one to actually understand. Okay, Avirami. In my opinion, the hardest part is what comes to the gradual progression of the condition, right? Um, in my case, and I've seen people even today, parents, a lot of parents actually, they hide, we're shy to accept it, we don't accept it. We think it will pass gradually and all that stuff. How did you come to terms that your kid's spectrum condition is, let's say, I don't want to put it in this way, but it's lifelong?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't accept it overnight. I mean, like you said, it takes a lot of time for us to come in terms with the fact that the first thing is if they are the very first case in the family, it's very hard for us to even accept. So that's one thing, and the second thing is when you raise them in a large circle of family, then the expectation is that the understanding is not just limited to the parent but also to the extended family. So that way, initially I also thought this would pass. I mean, I felt it was only a delay and things would settle down eventually. But sadly, the wait was longer than I expected. So I was from day one. I was told that there's no cure for autism, but I refused to accept it because, with science progressing so much, with medicines coming in for too many things that we can't even imagine, nano surgeries, microsurgeries happening, and I completely ruled this out. I was like, how can there not be a cure? There has to be something, or maybe as he grows in the next 5 years, there'll probably be a cure, and this is what I stuck to. And over a period of time, I slowly realized that he is being himself, and there's nothing that I can change. And what probably can change is the way we looked at him. We, in the sense, foremost, it's me and my husband. So how are we going to change our perspective? How are we going to look at it? And are we going to say that yes, let him be who he is, and we can do nothing really about it, accept and then support him. And when I also stopped focusing on labels like mental instability, or he probably has, sometimes you wouldn't even have a label. It's just that the kid is not doing it, so he's not capable of it. So it's as blunt as that. So when I stopped dropping them, when I stopped bothering about timelines, things got lighter. I actually stopped pushing myself to meet the timelines set by the society or the world. So this understanding was not an overnight or a single or a one step, one moment understanding. It had to come over a long time, and I've been through this for 8 years now. And maybe the last 2 3 years I'm more stable in handling things. And once you get clarity on these things, acceptance follows. Yes, and this is also something I tell people who are on the same battlefield. And understanding that this is lifelong will not be a shocker anymore, because you have trained yourself to be in that position of handling the child the way he is. So it comes really calmly once you have the complete acceptance. And sometimes when I talk about acceptance, it can be a bit dodging, because you may not be in a position to accept the child all the time. And particularly in your initial phases, you might be a little, on the yes, and sometimes on the no side as well. So you need to keep building on the clarity, and the day you realize that he is who he is and you can do nothing much about his condition. My role as a parent was only to support him and do nothing about changing his behavior. So I mean, having said this, some days are really hard. There are days where I am put in a situation where I'm extremely guilty about the way I looked at him, the way I handled him. But over a period of time, you start preparing yourself to the fact that this is a lifelong condition, and with that, I think once you are settled mentally and emotionally with that, this acceptance of this being a lifelong problem will no more be a fear. So that it's a very gradual thing, Rashdeep. It's hard for me to say that I'm okay or I'm not okay. Sometimes most of the time okay, I'm okay, but there are days where I'm not okay as well. But
Yeah.
I need to bounce back and say this is the fact,
Yeah.
and I'll have to go with it.
Exactly. So acceptance does not come overnight. And I believe as a parent, um, yeah, so no one in my family had it, right? And I it's very difficult to say what is ADHD to a person because I myself am so very new to it and all that. Sometimes it's guilt, sometimes you feel pain, sometimes you feel why did it happen to you? I mean, it's more to me. I think my wife has more regrets. My wife has got regrets in a sense that she found it very difficult to accept. Um, and but I guess what I also did at that point of a time is once I accepted the fact, then I decided that the only thing that I can do right now is support her. And I did not try changing her, but I found out that if she's a high functional child with certain condition, I have to tap those potential, which would include sketching, music, dancing with numbers. So you will have to work on those skills, and you have to consider that you are there for her. There will be days that will be tough. Does it make me frustrated? It does at times. I'm a human after all. Um, and it is just like when I'm teaching someone, when I'm talking to somebody and somebody does not perform after so this thing, it is a little bit of pressure. And then there is a pressure. I run a small business, so there are lots of pressure on me also, right? It's a very tough world. So at that point of a time, but it is wrong for me to blame anyone for this, to anyone. I'm not saying only to my child, because at night when she sleeps, she still sleeps with me, right? And I know before, so it's always I try and say this. Papa loves Shivangi. Shivangi loves Papa. When she goes and when she gets up, I say this thing. The first thing she wants to see is where is Papa. That's the first thing in the morning. So I know it's so. What I'm trying to say is that I think I'm living it. I'm living for my child. I'm living for my family right now. I've lived my life. Okay, mine is done. There are lots of things in my life. I love traveling. I love blogging and all that and stuff. I'm trying to do all of this thing, but I think now I'm just living for my family and all that stuff for that matter. And it's okay. I mean, it's okay if this is what God, if this is how it was supposed to happen, then it's okay. Chalo, it's fine. And let's not also compare with other kids. A lot of parents have this comparison. Oh, he, we went to a party. This kid looked at me, or no, there are a lot of instances where the cases. There's one kid, even my wife came and told me, one kid even told that I don't like her. I don't like her and all that. So she was like, I mean, kids sense that I don't like her. And I said, did she fight? She said, no, she avoids confrontation, right? So she will just pass by. She will not. But I don't like her. So I tell my wife at that time of a time that it's you will emotionally it will be exhausting for you if you keep on
Yes.
paying attention to a lot of things. It's very difficult because
True.
if you can do something about it, you have a solution to it. If you cannot do, there is no solution. So you basically accept it and you try your best and
That's true.
accept the fact and the kind of a thing. And You try whatever you have done. I have tried my level best. Whatever we could do, you try. But at some point of a time, it's sooner than later. But I would also urge all the parents that, I know hope is there and all that sort. That's okay, fine. That is all right and all that. But don't blame yourself always. Like the other day, I was just dropped her from school, and there is a parent who came to me, and they said, "So your child comes here," and said, "Yeah." And then he said, "Okay, this is my condition of the child," and all that sort of a thing, and he said, well, what to do, and we are planning for a second child and all that sort of a thing and all that. So we are doing consultation and all that. I was listening to all these things, and I said, um, what does your gut feeling say? He said, do you like kids? Do you want to bring this person and that? But make sure that she doesn't get affected. And it's something, but at that point of a time, and um, we all have to at some point of a time accept that you can't have everything in this world. You cannot have this thing that you are. Some people are parents, some people are not parent, right? They try their attempt, but they're not mother and father for that matter. Accept the fact that God has given to you. Anyway, I'll become emotional now, so let's go in this thing.